It's kind of been a lifelong pursuit. I really never made a conscious decision, like, that I was going to be a painter or an artist. I was approaching graduating high school, and my high school art teacher said, like, what are you going to be? What are we going to school for? And I said, my parents think I'd make a great X-ray technician. It's like, what's that? I'm like, I have no idea. So he kind of, planted that seed and said that I'd make a good contribution to the art world. And so from there, I just said, all right, I'm going to go study painting and illustration. So I went to LCC, Luzerne County Community College. From there, I went to Marywood University. It was always painting, painting and drawing that I loved. So I decided, well, one day I'm really going to go after this. So that's what I've been doing since. My name is Joel Jones, Joel Carson Jones. I use the Carson because there's a lot of Joneses to distinguish myself. And we're at Plymouth, Pennsylvania.
Dark shadows every night around me creep. Makes me feel so blue. Oh, Lordy, I can hardly sleep.
So, I really don't know what I would be labeled as. I'm a trunk light painter that has elements of the fantastical or surrealist elements in it, which this is out of the ordinary for me because I'm a relatively small scale painter and hyper real. But this will be very realistic. It's just a ginormous painting. Yes, this was the first panel that I started for the mural. Okay, the material is called Polytab, which is basically a parachute cloth, and you would prime that the same way that you would like a canvas. So I put 2 coats of the highest grade primer on it with a roller, not a paintbrush. And once that's dry, then I could go through the drawing phase of it. It's fairly new. I think it's been, my research, like 5-6 years. So before this, it was, priming the surface, which would be, a building or whatever, exterior or interior for that matter. So yeah, it's a relatively new method, and then this becomes installed with this stuff called Novagel. It's like a glue. Mm-hmm. So you would apply that to the building, to the backside of this, and very carefully piece it together.
At the Historical Society, we have a concept that we often talk about when we're displaying the past. We like to say that we're talking about every person, what their life would have been like on a day-to-day basis. So when we look at that leisure community and how people were developing and forming ways to play in addition to ways to work, theater would be one of the obvious choices that people would want to experience and take advantage of. And the entrepreneurs would also know this, so they would want to build theaters to bring people to yet another money-making venture. So you had on Penn Avenue, in fact, it's Penn Avenue, Linden, Spruce, and Wyoming Avenue, that block. At one time, during that period, 1880 to 1920, there would be 6 different theaters located on that block. And the reason for this was because the city of Scranton became known as part of the vaudeville circuit. This is where early vaudevillians would come to test out their acts before taking them on to the bigger cities. The other thing they quickly realized was this was a group of hard-working people. And when they wanted to be entertained and spend money on it, they wanted to be entertained well. So if they didn't like a show, they made it known. There's stories of people throwing tomatoes and things like that. So it was known as a tough audience, which leads us to the phrase, if you could play Scranton, you could play anywhere. So I think people might recognize it more. If you could play New York, you could play anywhere today, but it really started in Scranton probably around the turn of the last century. When we talk about vaudeville, we're basically talking about variety shows with comedian acts and maybe a dance number and just like a nice multi-entertainment performance.
Yeah, so the projector definitely helped with setting up the early stages to make sure my drawing was remotely accurate. But it's still definitely a challenge because I'm working with something so small on the screen, and even when I start, magnifying it, I have literally 1 foot of space that I'm looking at 5 feet. So it's easy for the drawing to run away from you, but as you can see, I have 2 panels here. So I'm trying to work each section so I could set the section up that meets it. And it seems like everything's lining up, but with each one of these panels, it gets an overlap of 1 inch. So the math that's involved, it's kind of throwing me off a little bit, and I'm not a math guy, is each one of these rays that comes down from the sun, when it moves over 1 inch, I'm not exactly sure if they're going in the right direction. So what I'm doing right now is I'm placing just little markers with paint. But I think what I'm going to do is once I piece this together on location, I'm going to largely paint these on site because it'll be easier for me to chalk a line and know exactly where I'm going than just painting it in sections and hoping it all lines up perfectly. So that's my only concern at this point is these lines.
Yes, I'm mad and have a right to be after what my daddy did to me. I lavished all my love on him, but I swear I'll never love again. All you women understand what it is to be in love with a two-time man. The next time he calls me sweet mama in his loving way, this is what I'm going to say.
I've been working at the Lackawanna Historical Society for 30 years. This is my 30th year here, and I have seen a lot of changes in the last 2 decades. When I first started working at the Historical Society, we were kind of on the end of what might have been thought of as a depression. I started in my 20s. When I got here, most of my friends were leaving the area. They said, there's nothing to do here. I've got to get out of here. So I chose to stay, and I'm very glad I did because I got to see what in the 90s might have been called a renaissance, where things started to turn around a little bit. Personally, for me at the Historical Society, I saw an uptick in people being interested in the past. I think earlier in possibly the 60s and the 70s, people chose not to talk too much about that industrial past because they were so close to it and they didn't think that it was something to be celebrated, but something to escape from. I think in the 90s and definitely the 2000s, that idea shifted and people started to celebrate our shared heritage. And in doing so, they also started to rediscover or discover on their own this love for the arts. So I definitely see a link between what's happening now and what happened in the 1920s. There's definitely this celebration of our community and a desire to keep it going.
That's definitely been a part of me, that work ethic, that determination to make something happen. So yeah, I think the area living here has a lot to do with that, or at least growing up here.
Mean and hateful, I used to be your sweet mama, sweet papa, but now I'm just as sour as can be.
Hi, welcome to Scranton Chamorro's Mural Arts Program. I'm Rose Randazzo Pizzuto, Program Chairperson. The piece you are viewing is an original design commissioned by Scranton Chamorro to share the rich history of our city through public art. We work closely with local historians, property owners, city and county officials, and accomplished artists to produce timeless murals for decades to come. Visitors like you help support our mission to transform the landscape of the historic city of Scranton and promote diversity, unity, creativity, and conservation of public art. Your generosity and patronage give artists an opportunity to affect change in the world. To learn more, visit scrantonchamorro.org or click the QR code on the site to take a self-guided tour of our murals with your smartphone. Thanks for stopping by and have a great day.